A man sits quietly on his porch, just past sunrise. He's in his mid-50s, wearing a worn flannel shirt, holding a cup of black coffee. The steam rises slowly. His face is calm, not tired, not rushed, just still. The kind of stillness that only comes after years of running, striving, and holding everything together. He looks out into the open, and for a moment, he smiles, not because someone is watching, but because no one is. He doesn't hate love. He's loved deeply. He's given, lost, healed, and even hoped. But now, he simply loves something more, his freedom. This isn't the story of a man who gave up on connection. It's the story of a man who found a different kind of connection, the one that starts within. At a time when the world expects people to settle down, he's choosing to rise up, into clarity, into simplicity, into something that feels more honest than any relationship ever did. So why do some men, in their most mature and experienced years, choose not to seek love anymore? Why does solitude feel more fulfilling than romance? And why is that not a sign of fear, but of growth? This is not about being alone. It's about finally being free. By the time a man reaches his mid-40s or early 50s, life begins to take on a different shape. The years have layered him with roles: husband, father, provider, problem solver. He's built, protected, endured. He's shown up for everyone, often placing his own needs last. And then, gradually, things begin to shift. Perhaps the marriage that once held promise has ended or quietly faded into distance. Perhaps the children are grown now, no longer needing rides, advice, or daily attention. The house that was once full is now quiet. The calendar that was once packed is suddenly blank. And in the stillness, a question begins to echo. Who am I? If I'm no longer someone's husband, if I'm no longer someone's father in the same way? This question doesn't always come with panic. Sometimes it brings clarity, because when the noise settles, when the roles loosen their grip, what remains is the man himself. Not the title, not the expectation, just the person. According to recent data from Pew Research, nearly 27 to 29% of men in the United States over the age of 50 are now living single and report no interest in remarriage. This isn't just a statistic, it's a sign of something deeper, a cultural and emotional shift happening quietly across backyards, apartments, and cabins across the country. These men aren't turning away from love with bitterness. Many of them have loved deeply, but something has changed. Something within them has asked for more space, more silence, more honesty. Not because they no longer care, but because they finally do. So what makes a man, at this stage in life, no longer crave love the way he once did? Why would someone who once gave so much of himself now choose to live without the structure of a relationship? The answer is layered. It's not simple, but it often begins with one word: freedom. He's not someone who never gave his heart. He's someone who gave it fully and felt it break. The lessons from past relationships didn't leave him bitter. They left him aware. He no longer views love through rose-colored lenses. He sees it for what it is: beautiful when it works, painful when it doesn't. Love, to him, is no longer essential. It's optional. If it comes, it's a gift. But he doesn't depend on it to feel whole. He's learned how to live well without it. In relationships, he often played roles: the strong one, the patient listener, the fixer. He wore these identities like armor, even when they didn't fit. Now, in solitude, he doesn't need to edit himself. He can be quiet without being asked what's wrong. He can be still without having to explain. Freedom, for him, is not needing to manage anyone's expectations, not even his own. He spent years carrying emotional weight, not only his own, but his partner's, too, and while he did so with care, it drained him. Today, he protects his energy. Peace is no longer something he hopes to find in someone else. It's something he guards fiercely within himself. He no longer wants to be the emotional center of a relationship. He just wants calm. There is a profound difference between being alone and feeling lonely. He understands that now. Solitude is his choice, not his curse. In silence, he hears his own thoughts. In stillness, he meets himself. He doesn't fill his days with noise to escape. Instead, he embraces the quiet, because it's finally his. His career may be slowing down, but his sense of purpose is not. He's rediscovered joy in the little things: morning bike rides, reading old novels, writing in a journal. Woodworking, painting, gardening. These aren't distractions. They are expressions of self. He no longer needs someone to complete his life. He's already living it. He doesn't have to explain why he prefers silence over conversation, or why a Saturday alone sounds better than a dinner party. He doesn't need to account for his moods, his routines, or his boundaries. Freedom, to him, is the absence of justification. It's living a life that doesn't need approval. He knows that just because something was once beautiful doesn't mean it still fits. Love may have served him once, but it may not serve who he is today. He no longer holds on out of habit. He lets go out of clarity. That's not fear, it's growth. He's not avoiding connection. He's avoiding emotional exhaustion. He remembers the draining repetition of, "You should have known," or "Why didn't you say anything?" Now, he prefers silence over struggle. It's not that he can't communicate. He just values his peace more than he values being right, or being understood. His relationship with himself has become the most honest one he's ever known. He eats better, sleeps more, meditates, and takes care of his body. He's not waiting for someone else to make him feel loved. He's already doing the work. He doesn't need a partner to fill the gaps, because he's filled them himself. He knows exactly what a relationship costs: time, energy, compromise. And for the first time, he's asking himself a different question. Is love worth the price of losing my peace? Often, the answer is no. Not because love is unworthy, but because his peace is finally priceless. Emotional freedom is not about pushing love away. If you want to not about emotional freedom, it's not fear, bitterness, or cynicism. It's simply the realization that love is no longer a necessity. It's a choice. There's a subtle but powerful difference between isolation and independence. One closes the door in pain. The other opens it with clarity. He's not avoiding love. He's not hiding from connection. He just no longer depends on it to feel complete. There was a time when being loved by someone else defined his worth. Now, being at peace with himself defines his strength. That shift didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, after heartbreaks, hard conversations, and the quiet moments in between. The men who choose solitude are often the ones who've already faced themselves. They've sat in silence with the weight of their past and chosen not to run from it. They've stopped looking for someone to fix them because they've done the work of healing on their own. There's nothing cold about that. In fact, it's one of the warmest truths. When you no longer need to be loved in order to feel whole, you're finally free to love without fear, without attachment, and without losing yourself. This kind of emotional independence isn't about shutting people out. It's about letting life in, and on your own terms, in your own time, without apology. Tom is 62. He lives alone in a small cabin tucked deep in the Oregon woods. It wasn't always like this. For 28 years, he was married. A father, a husband, a man with a calendar full of commitments and a heart full of duty. When the marriage ended, it didn't happen in a storm. It ended the way some things do. Quietly, over time, through years of growing apart. Tom tried to date again. He gave it a fair chance. But every conversation felt like a script. Every gesture carried an expectation. He noticed how often people approached love like a transaction, one where compatibility was measured more by strategy than sincerity. So, Tom stopped trying to get back out there. He got back to himself instead. Now, every morning, he makes coffee slowly. He writes in his journal by the window while the sun filters through the trees. His dog, Max, lies quietly at his feet. There's no need to explain where he's been or why he's quiet. No pressure to impress, just the rhythm of a life that finally feels like his. When someone once asked him if he'd given up on love, he didn't hesitate. He looked out the window, smiled, and said, "I didn't lose faith in love. I just gained faith in silence." That one sentence holds everything. It's not about turning away from others, it's about turning inward and realizing that peace, once found, doesn't ask for much, only that you don't trade it away. Being single is not a rejection of love. It's simply a more selective way of honoring it. It's knowing that not every connection needs to be pursued, and not every silence needs to be filled. When the urge to be with someone fades, something more powerful often rises. The quiet ability to care for yourself without condition. For many men, this chapter doesn't begin with a dramatic decision. It begins softly, with mornings that feel calm, evenings that bring clarity, and days that no longer revolve around someone else's expectations. There is no applause in this journey, no spotlight, Just the simple truth of choosing what feels honest. This isn't about isolation. It's about alignment. Living in a way that no longer chases approval or avoids loneliness. It's about choosing presence over pressure and intention over impulse. You may not know exactly where this path leads, but what you do know is that it starts with you. Not with a promise to someone else, but with a quiet promise to yourself. To live fully, to feel freely, and to never again apologize for choosing peace over noise. That's not giving up. That's growing into who you really are. He doesn't hate love. In fact, he respects it deeply. He knows what it feels like to care, to give, to lose, and to heal. But he also knows the cost, and now, he's no longer willing to trade his freedom for it. Not because love isn't worthy, but because his peace has become priceless. This isn't a story about giving up. It's about growing up. It's about reaching a point where the silence feels more nourishing than the noise, and where the stillness offers more truth than the chase ever did. So now, the question turns to you. Who are you living for? Are your days built around who you used to be, or the man you've quietly become? Have you made room for your own voice to be heard, even when no one else is around to listen? Maybe it's time to step into your life without apology, to choose yourself, fully and without shame, not because you've stopped believing in love, but because you've finally started believing in you. If this message resonates with your own journey, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let your story be part of this conversation, because chances are, someone else out there needs to hear it. And if this kind of reflection matters to you, subscribe to the channel. More videos on self-awareness, emotional independence, and midlife growth are coming soon. This is just the beginning.